What are the best decks to beat in Modern going into July 2020? That is what we're going to talk about today. Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master. And if you're wondering about what exactly is the power level of Modern, what do you got to be prepared for? Don't worry, I got the answers. Of course I've got the answers. That's what you come here for the delicious, beautiful Modern content. And I also stream now. You want to see me stream? You want to talk about this stuff while I'm streaming? Hey, go check out my schedule in the description below. But in any case, yeah, we're going to go over the top 10 archetypes I think you should be prepared for in Modern going into July. And I'm just going to preface this that I know that's going to be probably some shakeups because of Core 2021. Specifically, Conspicuous Snoop is probably going to go into some sort of Goblin deck and is going to have some presence in the metagame, but it's not so obvious that it will clearly dominate or where it's going to be in the metagame, or even if people will find the right build for this card. Because, I mean, even if you look at a card like Uro, everyone knew that Uro was going to be good, but Uro actually had no presence in Modern for like a month because it was just, no one knew what shell it should be in. People were trying to build cards around it with like Thought Scour and stuff like that, and in the end, you just throw it into a control deck and that's all you have to do, and the deck builds itself from there. You don't have to build a deck around Uro, you just throw it in a deck that is already made. We're not going to include any Goblin deck, and maybe Goblins is going to jump it into the metagame somewhere over the next month, but aside from that, I think that this list is going to be pretty stable. Alright, so let's start off with number 10, Devoted Devastation, aka Counters Company, Devoted Druid combo, you know the stuff. This is an incredibly underrated archetype right now in Modern. It's super powerful, really consistent, really strong. Laplacian, master of not only Eldrazi Tron, but also of Devoted Devastation, has been getting incredibly good results with it. Not only that, it is the only deck that gets to utilize companions as if the companion rule change never existed. Because the deck can make infinite mana, so it doesn't care. Doesn't care that it has to, pay a 3 mana tax to put the Lurrus in play. Oh no, how am I gonna pay for this? Oh, maybe I'm gonna use my infinite mana combo. That's exactly what it does. So it's super all in on combo. If you look at the list, I mean, it is super, they don't attack anymore. They don't do that anymore. But the point is, this is an incredibly powerful combo deck that does see play, does have a presence. If you go deep in an event, you're probably going to run into it. Very underrated archetype right now. Very underrated. Should be way higher up on this list. It's not, because you are not going to see a very large presence of this in the metagame. But maybe over the next few months we will, as it continues to prove itself. So moving on to number 9, Death Shadow. Death Shadow is always going to be somewhere on this list because it is basically like the modern day Jund deck. It is the Thoughtseize Police. There's always going to be some sort of usually there's going to be some sort of Thoughtseize deck in these top 10s. It's pretty reliable, still has a very strong proactive game plan of killing your opponent with Gurmag Anglers or Death Shadows with Temur Battle Rage. So nothing against Death Shadow. It is sort of it's a very difficult archetype to play because it's very fragile. I mean, you're doing most of the work for your opponent. You're putting your life total almost within striking range. However, it is still a very rewarding archetype for skilled players, and therefore it still has a presence in the Modern metagame. So moving on to number 8, and I'm cheating here a little bit. Might be cheating here a little bit. Combo decks. Combo everywhere. There's combo decks. So we're talking Storm, Ad Nauseam, Infect, and I'm gonna count Mono Red Prowess here. They are not all large enough by themselves to be included in this top 10 list, but as a category of combo, I think they are. There is definitely sprinkles of Storm here, and Infect there, and Ad Nauseam is still around since it was one of the better combo decks since the Companion days, and also Mono Red Prowess still around because it also was one of the better decks during the during the Companion days. So I think as a category, this is something you're going to want to look out for, especially since there's a lot of overlap between these combo decks. Like if you play Damping Sphere, Chalice of the Void, they hate it. So just consider that there are these sort of combo decks in existence in Modern right now, and I think as a category you do have to give some respect to them. You do have to give some respect, because if you don't, then you're going to face like one of them, like one of these 4 decks. And you could say Prowess is like a creature aggro deck, but for me it's like a combo deck. You get your Enabler, which is the creature, then you start, you know, basically storming off and you kill your opponent. So yeah, have a plan for these sort of combo decks. So moving on to number 7, Dredge. And normally I'd like to put Dredge a lot lower, but I think Dredge, it might be a little bit better positioned than usual. And I'd like to remind everyone, Dredge is the affinity of today. Now, a long time ago, you always had to have like Stony Silence or Artifact Hate to beat the artifact decks, the affinity decks, because if you didn't, they just crushed you. They had a 70% win percentage game 1, and if you did not have any hard artifact hate, they will continue to have that win percentage going into games 2 and 3. So the same thing is like Dredge right now. If you don't have graveyard hate, you're going to get obliterated by this deck. And what I think pushes Dredge into a pretty good position right now is that there isn't very good graveyard hate right now. A lot of decks want to utilize their graveyard. As we move up in this list, they're either utilizing their graveyard or they don't have the tools really to shut down Dredge. So I just saw like a Modern challenge just a week ago. There was 4 Dredge decks in the top 8. 4 Dredge decks. That shows an event that was not prepared for Dredge. So the presence of Dredge is always going to have, it's always going to be dependent on how much graveyard hate is within that tournament, how much graveyard hate people decided to bring to the event. And that's a strategic decision up to you, because Dredge's presence could be very strong or it could be nothing at all. So people could bring a lot of graveyard hate and then like Dredge has no presence period, or a lot of or people don't bring any graveyard hate and you have to either hope to dodge the Dredge deck or just accept the loss. Just accept the loss. Maybe you're tight on sideboard cards in your list. If you're tight on sideboard cards, maybe just say, do you know what, I'm going to hope Dredge isn't going to be prominent in this tournament. And then if you have a lot of sideboard slots, you could say, hey, do you know what, I can afford a few Grafdigger's Cage or Tormod's Crypt or Soul Guide Lantern, Rest in Peace, Leyline of the Void, whatever you got. Whatever you is good for your archetype. If you've got the room for it, do you know what, play it. And if you don't, do you know what, it might be worth the gamble, because Dredge isn't always so present in any particular tournament, because it all depends on, a lot depends on the sideboards of Dredge's opponents. So moving on to number 6 is Humans. So Humans is starting to rise back up to the top. I think because there's a lot of relatively good matchups going on for Humans. Things like, I think they do relatively well against those combo decks, because it is like a Death and Taxes Prison-like strategy. You know, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, and, you know, Meddling Mage, they go a long way. So they have just a really fast clock. So they got some good game against the combo decks. Not to mention they have a very good game against Death Shadow. They really do not care about a lot of what Death Shadow is doing, and things like Reflector Mage is just a beating. It's just a beating against cards like Gurmag Angler and Death Shadow itself. So they just easily tempo out a deck like that. So I think Humans now has enough good matchups, and a lot of its bad matchups have disappeared enough that Humans has a relatively good presence in the metagame. Not to mention, it did get tools. You know, it got new cards from Ikoria, which help gain a few more percentage points than they would otherwise. So moving on to number 5, Gruul Aggro, Gruul Ponza, Gruul Midrange, whatever the hell you want to call it. Sometimes they play Pillage, sometimes they don't, I don't care. Whatever, you know what I mean, you know what I'm talking about. So this aggro red-green like Ponza deck is still doing well. It was by far one of the best decks in Modern just a few months ago. Lost a lot of percentage points when Companions came out because it couldn't adopt one. And I think it's still now a reasonably strong deck still in the metagame, even though the Ponza part of it is not incredibly good because it doesn't really hit any of the snow control decks, and the fact of the matter is Blood Moon is not really that well positioned here, but it still nails some decks. you'll still get some surprise wins. It's not focused on that. It's got a good aggro plan of playing like Colossus and a lot of other creatures. They go, you know, Bloodbraid Elf's still strong, still good. So the deck is still aggressive in multiple facets in the modern metagame, and I think that is something that you have to be prepared for. Number 4, Burn. Burn! Now this is a deck that I think is overrepresented in the metagame. I don't know if it belongs in this position, but you have to be prepared for it because it is still one of the most common archetypes you're going to run into. This was, you know, in week 1, the best Lurrus deck in the metagame. And by the time that the companions got fixed, Burn was not the best Lurrus deck in the metagame, but still so many people bought into Burn at the time that they still have the cards. So what are they going to do with them? Are they going to sell them? I mean, if people who borrow decks, they can just, you know, just give the cards back and then, you know, whatever, borrow another deck. But for anyone who bought into the deck permanently, they still have the cards. So Burn is still relatively well high on, it's going to be pretty present in the modern metagame. I don't know if it deserves this spot. It's number 4 because it's going to be one of the most common decks you play against, so you have to have a plan against it. It doesn't matter if a deck isn't well positioned. If you play against it often, then you need to have a plan against it. That's why I'm playing mostly mono blue Merfolk, because I don't take damage from my lands, and I play Master of Waves to destroy them, pro-red creature, which puts an army on the battlefield, and I'm moving away from Simic Merfolk because the mana base just kills me, and I don't have like any good answer to any burn spell, and I get just completely tempoed out. And even if I don't believe that Burn is well positioned right now, it's still out there. It's still out there. Now, make no mistake, like, Burn is probably okay. It's a fine deck. I just don't think it should be this high up on the list. So I think it's an overrated archetype right now. Maybe someone can prove me wrong, but I mean, like, decks higher up on this list, and, you know, don't forget, like, Uro seems like a beating. Eldrazi Tron's Chalice of the Void seemed like a beating. I'm reasonably sure that Humans has a even to good matchup, and like you need good matchups when you're playing Burn, and Dredge is still around, stuff like that. I think the Burn is just overrated. It's a deck, but I don't think it should be this high. It's just high because it's still a remnant of the companion metagame. Now moving on to number 3, Urza. Now, I can't really just tell you why Urza's doing so well. I mean, it's just a good deck. It's one, like, Snow is pretty good, and Emery is still doing strong, and well, let's not forget that Emery is doing what everyone hated from Lurrus. You know, recycling Mishra's Bauble every single turn. People, for some reason, Emery's been doing this the entire time. No one really blinks an eye, and then all of a sudden, Lurrus is recycling Mishra's Bauble from the graveyard every turn, and now, oh my god, this is broken! This is a broken interaction! This can't happen! Lurrus has to be banned! We have to ban Lurrus! But when it's Emery, it doesn't matter. And Emery can be played for like 1 mana. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? So anyway, these Urza decks still take advantage of the same broken stuff that Lurrus was doing in the past. But in addition to that, you know, still getting like engineered explosives and still playing Urza, period, which grinds out any deck that wants to 1-for-1 removal you, because, I mean, even if you kill the Urza, they still get the Golem in the end, and then if they're allowed to untap with Urza, or if they have enough mana, then they just keep getting value with the Urza. So Urza is still a very strong archetype today in the modern metagame. Number 2, Eldrazi Tron. Eldrazi Tron. Now this deck is sort of under debate whether it should if it's even good anymore. Well, let me tell you, the metagame's filled with Eldrazi Tron. And why not? It is like the perfect balance of like aggro and prison and Tron all at once, like Tron control. It can do everything. It's like, I want to say it's aggro Tron, but it's also like prison mid-range or something like that. You know, it's got a lot of really good elements going for it. It's got big chunky creatures. It's got its own Thoughtseize effect with Thought Not Seer. It's playing Chalice of the Void, so it doesn't have to worry about any of that degenerate combo crap. Plays Karn the Great Creator, shutting down any artifact strategy that's in front of it. You know, screw Emery and your Mishra's Baubles. Karn the Great Creator says otherwise. And great card advantage because it's a toolbox card. You grab stuff from the sideboard, whether it be Trinosphere, Walking Ballista, Ensnaring Bridge. So like Eldrazi Tron can basically do everything, and it gets to benefit from like amazing lands. It plays the Tron lands and Eldrazi Temple. I mean, that card's busted. I mean, we're talking about, like, City of Traitors is on the reserved list. So those are legacy powerful cards. And basically, Eldrazi Tron gets to utilize that. So great mana, very strong creatures. Reality Smasher, Cavern of Souls make them, like, uncounterable. I think what Eldrazi Tron is going to be is maybe similar to what Death Shadow was, I don't know, 3 years ago, where this is going to be just like one of the core staple decks of Modern, one of the strong decks that you could, I think you can, I think it's one of the best decks right now. It can be debated whether it's the best or in this number 2, number 3, number 4. I think it's going to be in that top 5 always for quite a while because it's so strong and flexible. And also, I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think, you know, as they print more lands, I mean, they already utilize like a bunch of different type of utility lands in their game plan. So Eldrazi Tron, very strong, I think reliable deck to buy into. And a lot of people are playing it. A lot of people are getting results with Eldrazi Tron. You know, maybe it'll have one bad week, but it's just going to come back strong another week as it adapts if it needs to. Eldrazi Tron is number 2 in terms of one of the decks you have to beat in Modern. And moving on to number 1. And even though it's number 1, I think it is grossly underrated. Snow Control. Now, when I talk Snow Control, I'm talking like Bant Snow, Sultai Snow. I'm talking about the Wilderness Reclamation versions, the ones without. It's all Snow Control to me. They play Arkham's Astrolabe, Icefang Quaddle, Uro, Counterspells, Removal. It's all the same crap to me, all right? There's nothing any different. So, Snow Control is hands down, I think, the most powerful, strongest deck in Modern today. It's this incredible draw engine. I mean, everything, even when they kill creatures, they're drawing cards. Icefang Quaddle, draw a card, block your thing, you lose, I get something. They always draw a card, no matter what they do. Uro, draw a card. Escape it from the graveyard, draw a card. Teferi, draw a card. Jace the Mind Sculptor, draw a card. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, draw a card. They're drawing cards all over the place. This is stupid. I think it's stupid. Very underrepresented in the metagame, I think, right now. Probably because of the price. This is, I think, the most expensive deck in Modern right now. Like, I'm seeing, even in ticks, it's over 1,000 ticks. Like, $1,000 in ticks. That's ridiculous. So, the most expensive deck in Modern, and I think very underrated. And if people want to buy in, like, it's probably hard for people to even borrow it with things like Mana Traders and Card Hoarder and stuff like that, because you know you need a hefty account in order to borrow all the cards for this thing. But I think this is one of the best decks. It just, like, I mean, you go through all the decks, I mean, they're all in contention of being banned. People think Astrolabe should be banned. People think Teferi Time Reveler should be banned. Jace the Mind Sculptor was banned, and it's now it's unbanned. So there's, I mean, Veil of Summer. All versions of these Snow Control decks are using Veil of Summer. Ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. So they're really off the charts on power level and control, and it's very hard to grind out or beat because they're always drawing cards. You can't grind out this control deck as well as you would on against other decks. Uro is just, to another level, one of the best things that ever was for control. So, what do you think of this list? What do you think other people should be, you know, preparing for? What are you running right now? Are you running anything on this list? Because you know it's that damn strong. Let me know in the comments section below. So anyway, this has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, giving you the top 10 Modern decks that you have to be prepared for.